Okay.
Would you mind introducing yourself to my students?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Hudson. I am currently in Tennessee. I am in the process of moving from South Carolina to Oregon and currently on hold. But my background is actually wildlife ecology and conservation. And I kind of slowly transitioned from being kind of out and doing the science and doing field work to communicating science. So I started in kind of writing and editing press releases and kind of the academic publishing industry, which is where I've been now. And my current title is Learning and Development Specialist for a company called Research Square, which is based out of Durham, North Carolina. And I have been there for almost 60 years now, which is hard to believe, and working remotely this entire time.
Thank you, Natalie. So, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown, I guess, of what your day-to-day looks like working from home? Like, do you have a particular routine that you follow? Because I know that at school, we're so routine oriented and we're so, structured. How do you create that, or do you have to create that for yourself? Or, what are some of the boundaries with that?
Yeah, so the company I work for is pretty flexible in terms of, being able to kind of make your own schedule. I will say it definitely requires a lot of discipline. And that's something that when I participate a lot in our hiring and interviewing processes. And that's something that we kind of look for when we're looking for candidates to join the company, and are very kind of open about the fact that working from home, although it has a lot of benefits and some really great features, it also requires a lot of discipline. And so for me, my personal schedule is pretty, I would say it's pretty similar day to day. I know like several folks that I work with have fairly flexible schedules, and they allow for that. Really our kind of main purpose is, that the outcome. So getting the work done. We don't really care in most cases how it gets done. It's really that individual responsibility. So for me, I'm disciplined kind of by nature. So I stick to a pretty regular schedule of right now I do like 8 to 4 is my schedule, and I try to stick with that routine because it does help. Like I've found in the past, like as I was kind of just getting used to working from home, I would start early in the morning. This was about probably 5 or 6 years ago, because I thought I was a morning person. I was like, I'll just start at 7 and be done early in the afternoon, and that'll just, be my day. And I found that with working from home, I kind of needed to build in a little bit more of a break for myself. So starting a little bit later in the morning, where I still had some time in the morning to have like a normal sit down breakfast and really be able to do that, was really kind of when I shifted from more like the standard 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. And I like to get up and get ready during the day. I don't think I've maybe worn my pajamas to work like once or twice. So I try not to let that creep in. Maybe if I'm not feeling well or something, I'll work on the couch and maybe not get dressed. But that has been really important for me to kind of get ready and pretend like I am leaving the house. And that's been I think just a regular part of my day. But yeah, I think in terms of my overall schedule, it's pretty standard in the working hours. And I have a lot of meetings for my role. So my day is kind of interspersed. Usually I have at least one meeting a day. Sometimes I could have 3 or 4 meetings. So it kind of alternates between jumping into a meeting, like on Zoom or on Google Hangouts, and then doing just my work on the computer.
Thanks, Natalie. Okay, so I'm hearing you say, okay, wait, I need like a course in how to interview because it is so hard.
It is. It's not easy. That's
So
why they train
hard.
time in it.
I know. So, hi guys. Sorry, I'm learning too as we go through this. Okay, so from the 8 to 4, time span where you're working, do you tend to work in like, I know that you have your meetings interspersed, but do you tend to work for kind of a concentrated amount of time and then take a short break? Or do you try to get your most difficult work in the morning, in the afternoon? Do you have any suggestions for how to manage workflow?
Yeah, so I think that's something that's really important, and definitely I think there's a lot of kind of individual preferences and some self-awareness and kind of self-reflection that is really important. And I think something that definitely comes with time too. But I think recognizing kind of the time of day when you have your peaks, and recognizing, hey, I'm better in the morning. I can really, get a lot done in the morning. For me, the afternoon is not my good time. So I try to wrap up a little bit earlier in those cases. So I think it's really important to recognize, like, the time of day that you work best. I think putting work that requires more focus for you. So for me, that might be some like financial pieces of information or something that, I don't consider a huge strength of mine that takes a lot of focus, that takes a lot of effort into my peak times. So for me, some of that time goes into the morning for me. And the afternoon can be a good time to kind of triage like email and things for me, like around 3, I can say that's kind of when I start to dip. So I'll try to use that for like email communication or things that don't really require a lot of mental energy for me, or just kind of organization. Like on my calendar, every day I have just a calendar event at 3 o'clock that's like review my calendar. So that's a time for me to kind of take a break and do that work and ensure that gets done at a time that's not my best time too. So that's something that we do. Like when I've managed a team of editors for almost 4 years, and when people are coming onto our teams and training and really getting like acclimated to working from home if they haven't before. In most cases, most people that we've worked with have come from research backgrounds, have come from universities and labs where they had a flexible schedule, but they were still going to a university and a lab and not being at home. So that's where we try to kind of coach on some of the self-reflection pieces, like just sitting down and saying, within 5 minutes, like when I look back at my week, like when was I at my best? Like when was I at my worst? What types of work are harder for me? What are easier? And kind of recognizing those patterns and being able to structure your day according to that, which takes a little bit of time, but just sitting down for 5 minutes or so is really all you need to think on that.
That's a great suggestion, actually, just to kind of build in that self-reflection and really kind of take a hard look at yourself and figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And like you said, it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, and it changes over time. Like I always tell the story in, I think, interviews or when I've had someone join my team. Like when I first started working from home, I started really early, like even before 7 in some cases, and I would just make a pot of coffee and drink way too much coffee and think that was working for me. And then I think maybe like 6 months in, sat down and was like, yeah, this schedule is not working for me. So I changed it. And I like always recommend kind of that periodic check-in for folks too, whether it's just every few weeks or monthly, to say, is this schedule working for me? Like what's working, what's not working? What changes do I want to make?
Gotcha. So from what I'm hearing, you think that, or there's some suggestions that you have might be kind of checking in with yourself periodically, seeing what's working and what's not working, getting up, getting dressed, having like a little bit of a morning before you sit down and try to tackle what you have to tackle through the day. Are there any other tips that you think might be really helpful for students?
Yeah, I think, it's really easy just with screen time, and especially whether you're just working on personal things, but then when you add kind of the work component and the education component, so now you have all the things that you normally do on your computer and your phone for fun, combined with all the things that you're doing on the computer or your phone for your school or professionally for me. So I think it's really important to know when to kind of turn off those things. So really sticking to what your schedule is another recommendation I have. It's really easy to kind of say, oh, I'll, get to that later. And then, it may be 9 o'clock at night or whatever it is. And then that becomes a pattern. So I think being able to say, okay, I'm done for the day, turn off the computer or whatever it is, so that you're not kind of tempted to just pop back in each time you walk by the computer or whatever the case may be.
That's a really good point. Yeah, just being able to kind of shut down, because it's harder to have that line when you're working from home, right?
Yeah. And I think I like to have a designated workspace. There's definitely situations, especially now where people are working and learning from home unexpectedly, where you may not have had a designated workspace for yourself. So I think being able to just, set up whatever you have to create a little bit of a workspace for yourself to where you feel comfortable, whether it's putting like a plant or a candle or something to where you just kind of have that designated workspace if you're able to at the kitchen table, or if you do have a desk that you just have kind of your own little area that is your like working area.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And that's something I'm feeling the same way, right? Like we're kind of in this transitional time. I have like a teeny desk that I set up and I put a candle on it and a plant, and I totally relate to that. Like just having a comfortable place to sit down that makes me feel happy. It just makes all like the difference in the world. And it doesn't have to be anything that's like grand,
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we missed that you think might be super useful when we're talking about working from home? So I think that some of the things that I'm noticing in some of the language, that I hear people talk about, and we've kind of talked about this before. It's like, oh, well, I'm just working from home, right? Like there's kind of like this downplaying where it doesn't seem like people take it seriously sometimes, but this is serious, right? Like this is your entire career. You've cultivated working from home and you've done an amazing job doing it. So can you give any like guidance around that?
Yeah, I think I'm also in a unique situation right now where we're moving cross country. So we're here at my parents' house where I haven't been since high school, my husband and I. So I'm also navigating, being here with my mom for the first time in a long time. And my husband is also at home with me right now, which is not normal for me. So I haven't in the past had to really navigate as many distractions
Mhm.
as I do right now. And that's something that we've been talking about a lot for everyone that I work with. We have almost 300 people, and many of them have their children at home right now and have their partners at home right now. And I think one thing that's been important for me is to just in the morning, whoever you have at home with you, to just say, hey, these are my working hours for the day. These are when I have my classes or whatever schedule you have. I run through like what meetings I have, these are, the 3 hours I have meetings. So I think it's really important to just communicate that to whoever is in your space and kind of have that open communication and kind of shared plan of what your working schedule is so that you can kind of create those boundaries for yourself. I think that's really important because if you don't do that, then you're getting the interruptions and then you can get some frustrations out of that to, the distractions that may come in. So I think you can kind of head that off early in the morning or even for the week if you want to set out your plan for the week. I think is one recommendation that I have and something that I've been doing, but something that I've also heard that has been working well for others too.
I love that advice. Thank you so much. That's something that I think I need to be better at too. So it's good for me to hear this.
Yeah, I've also seen people who like a girl I work with posted a picture where she had just like a little dry erase board on her office door because her kids are home and her husband's home right now. And she just said, these are my working hours, these are my quiet hours on the door. And then she just like, cleans it off every day and changes it so that no one has to come in and knock and interrupt her. They can just see that right on the door. So.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. Yeah, no, it really is. So just to kind of go off topic for a second, I know a lot of my kids are always curious about how people kind of got to where they are, and you gave a little bit of an intro at the very beginning, but would you mind just kind of digging in a little bit more and telling us about your experiences in wildlife ecology and really like what made you realize that working from home and in the role that you have was a good fit for you?
Mhm. Yeah, sure. I know I kind of glossed over that history a little bit. Yeah, so I went to undergrad at College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina, and was a biology and Spanish major at the time, and wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do after college. I had at one point been a pre-dental student, so I was kind of looking at dental school as the path, but I had always been interested in sea turtles, which sounds really funny to a lot of people, but for me, like it actually started, I was, I think 7 or 8. We used to go to Charleston to visit my godmother. She kind of introduced me to her love of marine biology and the ocean. So I started doing field work actually to look at sea turtles nesting eggs each summer when I would visit her. So there's pictures of me on like 4-wheelers out on the beach in Charleston when I was 8, collecting sea turtle eggs. So it was always kind of a passion of mine and something that I loved, but I never really saw like a clear career path. And I had, family who were like, dental school, like that's the way to go. That's really secure and sounds great. And I really just, after doing a lot of volunteering and some job shadowing in dentistry when I was in school, just decided that that wasn't something that I wanted to do. I just wasn't that excited about it. And marine biology and wildlife ecology was something that was exciting to me. I just wasn't exactly sure like how I could make that a career path. So after undergrad, I started doing some volunteering at the South Carolina Aquarium and eventually got a couple internships there in conservation education, which really showed me like, hey, there's a really strong career path in this field and this is something that I want to do. So I applied to graduate school down at University of Florida in Gainesville, which is where I met Caitlin. So when I was working down there, right before I started grad school, I took a couple different like wildlife technician positions and started doing work in animal behavior specifically. So I worked with horseshoe crabs in mating behavior, which was really interesting to me. So I decided that when I was starting my graduate research that I would work in feeding behavior in an endangered sea turtle species. So I spent most of my graduate research down in Florida looking at the green sea turtle is the turtle that I studied, and I looked at how their diet changes over their life history, so how they eat differently at different stages of life, which is really important when you think about conservation and animals having access to the food that they eat in these kind of primary life stages. So that was what most of my work was in, which then led me after graduate school down to St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. So I took a position with U.S. Fish and Wildlife down there, which was awesome. I was, in St. Croix living this amazing island life and working with the leatherback sea turtles down there. And when I was down there, there were a lot of folks down there who were doing freelance editing work, science editing work for a company up in North Carolina. And I thought it was interesting. So I asked a little bit more about it. And at that time, I'd been doing some writing of press releases. And I was like, I actually really like kind of the writing piece of science and that communication of giving people access to science. And that became really interesting to me. So I started doing just freelance contract work for that company when I was down in the Virgin Islands. And when that position, I had a contract position. So when that ended, I decided to apply full-time to be a scientific editor. So that was back in 2013. And so I joined Research Square, which is the company that I'm at now, back in 2013, and just really loved the editing work. Shortly after that, I moved into a management position. So I then managed a team of editors doing mostly environmental editing for papers. And that was really where my passion was. And then actually several years later, so for the last 2 years, that work kind of led me to an interest in how people learn and develop in specific areas to support our business. So we have research that comes in from customers all over the world, and sometimes it could be in an area of study like business, sometimes it could be in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I've been working to develop a lot of programs around training in specific areas of study. So if we're getting a lot of papers in from customers in artificial intelligence and we don't have enough editors in that field, but we have some engineers who could probably do that, I developed the learning programs for those groups of people as well as some others. So it's been an interesting path. I've definitely diverted very far from like the field work that I was doing, but it's been really rewarding to kind of think through like what the importance of communication in science is, especially like right now with the coronavirus and the COVID-19 kind of being on the front lines of research and ensuring that gets out to people is really important.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I completely agree. Just being able to communicate science clearly is such an important thing. And thank you for all the work that you're doing for that. And I love that you showed the trajectory of your career, because I think sometimes in high school, and I don't know how you felt, but it's overwhelming, to think about how to get from point A to point B, and it's not always a straight line. So I think it's really good to see, different variations that people have taken, different paths people have taken to get there.
Yeah, it always changes. Like I would never have expected to be where I am now with what, I even studied in graduate school. And every year I think there's something new where I'm kind of building skills and building learning that, I may not know where it's going to take me, but it's interesting to me. And then you may look back and in 2 years you've applied that somewhere that you didn't expect. So I think, having like a curious approach to learning and development without kind of knowing what the end result may be is a really great approach to careers and to life in general.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I love that philosophy. Is there anything else you would like? Sorry, Zuzu is just like all up in my face.
I do not have my dog in here.
Where's Augie?
She's locked out.
Is there anything else that you would like to say to the kids? Anything we missed? I can't remember if I already asked you this question. I don't think I did.
Nothing really kind of top of mind. I mean, I think something to, just think about as you're working from home and learning from home for the first time is just to, not be too hard on yourself. I think it's going to take some practice. It's going to take some time and some effort to kind of figure out what works for you and what's not working for you. And I think just, giving yourself that space to say, okay, today, has been a good day. I think I can make some changes and have tomorrow be a better day. And I think that's what's important as you're kind of like adjusting to this new lifestyle.
I love that. And health and wellness, that sounds like growth mindset in action.
Yes.
So,
growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Yes.
Vote for
Yes.
growth mindset.
Thank you. I'm worth a year off talking about this stuff. And honestly, it's what I've been hearing kind of so much from everyone that I've been talking to about working from home and just learning in general, right? Like it's ultimately what underlies everything. So I think I love that advice, giving yourself just some time to figure things out and learning as you go. And you know what? You fail, you fail. Oh my God, Suzu. You fail, right?
Yep. Yeah. And it's totally fine. And you'll just learn and do something different the next time. And yeah, I think that's a great approach.
Well, thank you so much, Natalie.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Sharing your time.